Well, national social security funds, of course, are gaining popularity in the likes of East Africa. We've been seeing them successfully rolled out in the likes of Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, and they have been around for decades in that region. Apart from that, we know that here in South Africa, a big focus has been on the National Health Insurance Scheme. A lot of talk about whether South Africa can, in fact, implement such schemes. With me to talk about some of the lessons learned in East Africa is Sheshi Kaniki, senior economist at Momentum. Sheshi, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Eleni.
Let's start off with why it's been so successful in the likes of East Africa. National social security funds, we have seen them rolled out, and it's not really about having high coverage, but it's just about starting the process.
Well, I'm not sure if they've been extremely successful. I would say that they have been successful in as far as reaching a certain part of the formal labor force. And for many people in those countries, the National Social Security funds are the only source of retirement income and for basic risk benefits prior and after retirement.
Because coverage isn't that great. I mean, in Kenya, we're looking at about 15%, in Tanzania 5%, and we've got 5.4% in Uganda. Do you think that is going to grow substantially as we go ahead?
I think the coverage issue is extremely important, especially for us in South Africa, where one of the key considerations for establishing a national social security fund here is to extend coverage. Now, are we going to see that coverage rate increase in those countries? Probably not significantly, because many of the labor force in those countries work in the informal sector. What's really important about coverage is that you need multi-tiers of a social security system so that you can cover the broader population. What's great about South Africa is we already have a fairly well-established private pension industry, and that allows us to enjoy some good coverage already.
And of course, South Africa, you know, in South Africa, when we compare ourselves to other countries, we compare ourselves to the likes of the UK and the US, but we shouldn't actually. We should look on the continent and perhaps look closer to home to gain some of the lessons learned.
I would agree with you. I think it's important to compare ourselves to advanced economies, but economies on the continent, especially Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda and others that have had social security funds in place for many years, do give us important lessons. Very often you find that the kind of economic position of the people that would be part of those funds is not dissimilar from the type of people that the National Social Security Fund in South Africa is trying to reach.
Now, I've read your report, and you said some of the lessons that have been learned, of course, is the fact that you're going to be dealing with a bit of corruption, which obviously when you're dealing with money, things like that do tend to come up. Politically motivated investments as well, two of the big lessons that have been learned in that region.
Yes, corruption has been an issue. We saw in a report by Transparency International last year, they ranked the National Social Security Fund in Kenya, for instance, as the 28th most corrupt institution in that region. And, you know, when we think of South Africa, we rank much better than all the three East African countries as far as many of the international surveys. So the Transparency International survey most recently ranks us at about number 55, whereas those countries are in the region of about 130, 140. So I would imagine overall we are doing slightly better than our East African counterparts.
Of course, politically motivated investments, something that has been in the spotlight here in South Africa in various sectors, and of course, national security funds not exempt to this either.
Yes, there's a real danger that we could see national social security funds come under the spotlight as far as being targeted to fund politically motivated investments. For instance, if we look at Tanzania, we've seen recently, we're going into a political year in 2010, and there's been certain promises made, for instance, the construction of a bridge, and the government is looking to the National Social Security Fund to provide the resources for that. There's the construction of things like housing for the police and housing for the armed forces. And you ask yourself, yes, these could probably be classified as socially responsible investments. They definitely is a political spin to it. But the key question that we must ask is, what is the return and how will they benefit retirees when they exit the labour market? That's the key question.
In terms of assisting in GDP growth, because I think that's also quite important, because we don't want to build an economy and a system here in South Africa or in East Africa or anywhere else, in fact, that really relies on assistance and social security funds either. But obviously it is something that we need to embark on here in South Africa in particular, because we need to help those low income earners and of course the people that are living under the poverty line.
Absolutely. There's a very strong relationship between social security systems and GDP. On the one hand, as GDP grows, we see the labor market able to absorb more people, and in that way they can contribute more to a social security system, making it more sustainable. On the other hand, you find that a social security system collects money that can be invested to aid economic growth. So a strong relationship there.
So Sheshi, what would you like to see happening here in South Africa?
Well, I'm happy to see that we have a process in motion where there is debate, where there is engagement. We have a very robust, I think, private sector. And I think the lesson that I would take out of the East African experience, especially around coverage, which is our main question, is that yes, let's establish a social security fund, but let's ensure that it has a key place alongside a well-functioning private social security system, which can contribute to coverage as well as mobilize those resources that we need for investment and growth.